So last week, Muslim Salikov is supposed to be taking on Michel Pereira in a co-main event to Cater and Chikadze. Salikov out of the fight. Insert Dominance MMA's own Andre Fialho, a prospect I would say that a lot of UFC fans or fight fans should have already known. Spent some time over with Bellator, fight Chidi and Joe Kuani, and the joke ends there because for Chidi and Joe Kuani, he wins that fight impressively. He ends up in the UFC after Andre Fialho. He had to fight on Contender Series. Fialho didn't. So the last laugh goes to the Portuguese fighter representing Sanford MMA in Andre Fialho. And if you look at it, his 2020 was dog shit. For him, by his own standards, he loses a fight to Chris Curtis that's back and forth. In certain exchanges, he looks great. In the wrestling, he looks great. But ultimately, as that fight wears on, it is Chris Curtis's fight. And in the third round, he really pours it on and ends up getting the win there by ground and pound. So his next time out, he's supposed to take on Zane Kamaka. And in PFL's eyes, he wins that fight. By winning, Zane Kamaka missed weight and couldn't fight. So, listen, Andre Fialho gets the points and ends up in the PFL quarterfinals at welterweight, taking on Gleico França. And what happens in that fight? It's actually back and forth, and I scored that fight 19-19. You might go, Craig, you scored a fight 19-19. How does that work? Well, in the quarterfinals, they're 2 rounds because you fight twice in that night. And I had it first round going to França, second fight going to Fialho because Fialho rocked him 6 ways to Sunday and almost finished that fight at multiple occasions. França just kind of laid back on his wrestling when he got hurt. And whether you scored it 20-18 or 19-19, none of that matters because while Gleico França did win that fight on that night, he tested positive for stanozolol after that fight, and that got overturned to a no contest. So, our guy Andre Fialho goes out there, fights with LFA, takes on UFC veteran Antonio Dos Santos Jr., and in that fight, he has some good boxing. He's taken down some, and he gets beat by decision. Whether you scored that one 29-28 or 30-27, França loses that. So you might go, okay, well, 2 years ago, and we're really, it's a stretch saying 2 years ago for 2020, Andre Fialho goes 0-3 for all intents and purposes. Why is he in the UFC? Because he knocked guys dead in 4 fights in 2021, including James Vick, highlighted his great range, patience, and I say that because second round finish over Vick, first round over with UAE Warriors. This guy's boxing is second to none in this division. The attention to detail, the head movement, and the use of combinations are so impressive from Andre Fialho. That's why he's in the UFC on short notice, and he poses a very, very good risk to Michel Pereira. And just go back to 2 fights if you want to see Pereira kind of wilt under the pressure. His third round in his last fight against Nico Price, when he gets backed up, he loses in those exchanges. And his fight against Duško Todorovic, where Duško goes balls to the wall up against the cage, pre-UFC for either guy, if you want to see a way that Andre Fialho can win. But man, this guy's boxing is so much fun to watch, and being represented or representing a gym like Sanford MMA, a great way to get ready for a fight like Pereira, even on short notice.
Hey, 100% would be. But again, this is something that we always go back on when somebody's fighting a very relevant fighter on short notice. It's hard to beat a guy in the top 20 in the UFC with a 2 months training camp. And the fact that you're accepting this fight on genuinely, a week and a half's notice? Because it was, 3 days before last fight night card and then a week later. So on 10 days notice, you're being asked to fight one of the more dynamic strikers in the division. So whatever version of Fialho you expect, just lessen your expectations by 15% probably. Because a training camp really, really does matter, especially against such a unique fighter like Michel Pereira. Because he doesn't strike in a very classical type of a way. So normally, your training camp is getting you ready for all of his unorthodox attacks. And now that Fialho hasn't had that time, it's going to be not a shock to him, but it's going to take him a little bit of time to adjust to the unorthodox movements of Michel in the cage. I always go back to when TJ Dillashaw sparred Vasily Lomachenko, and for the first 2 minutes he looks pretty good, and it is. He moves really weird, he's doing all that weird hand stuff, but after a couple minutes, Lomachenko's like, okay, you can still only hit me with your 2 hands, the same rules that I'm following, and he starts to break him down. I think early on, Fialho is going to have a lot of trouble with the movement of Michel, but as the fight does progress, if Pereira does start to slow down, down, then similar to what we saw in last night's main event, if you can slow down the kicker and turn them into a boxer, there's a reason they're in kickboxing and not just in boxing. It's because their hands aren't as good. So if you can crowd the space of a kicker and force them to become a boxer, I think Fialho can have a ton of success.
2 examples of that. So Fialho, again, like a guy like Francis Ngannou, I'm a puncher, but occasionally I'll throw some kicks. And Fialho has very good leg kicks. He doesn't dedicate to them rarely ever, but when he does, they work to great effect. Inside and to the calf. Inside of the knee, outside of the calf. Great job when he does that. And if you want to liken a fight with Pereira to a fight with James Vick, listen, you're going to laugh at me, whatever. Oh, James Vick's got a bad chin. Yeah, he does. That's why he lost the fight against Andre Fialho. And Fialho threw some really good combinations. The right uppercut, the left hook, they're absolute money. And that's the nice thing about Fialho. Lots of different attacks, lots of different combinations that he can throw. He isn't just dedicated to 1 or 2 things. He'll pump that left jab out there, and then all of a sudden the jab, once you bring your guard up, he'll throw a hook, and when it lands, it looks really good. And for Vick, he had great, in the first round, he had great kicks. He throws that pumping kick to the body, he throws it to the leg, he throws the head kicks. He does a great job of it, but once Fialho kind of figures out the distance, and he does a really good job of not just swiping the kick away from the body, but moving his head and keeping his hand up there to kind of block some of those kicks. Now, when you're facing a very good kicker, doesn't matter how good your hand placement is. Valerie Loreda was a fighter like that. Some fights, she just glues her hand to her head because she got knocked out by Erin Blanchfield, and even then, when people hit you, you're still hitting the head, and you're able to kind of throw some people off. So for Fialho, if I can relay it to a lot of different fighters, like Loreda, like Ngannou, so on and so forth, he is able to do a lot of special things. The real knock against him, in certain fights he can get taken down. He also has very good offensive wrestling, but in his last fight, he took on Stefan Seklic, a guy who 2021 was a weird bag, if you want to call it, for Seklic, where he loses to Dwight Grant, but did he really? After a long layoff. So he gets cut from the UFC. Then he goes out and wins 2 fights. Then he takes on Fialho. Goes to take him down, single leg. Fialho goes, that's cute. Elbow to the head, knocked him down, finished him from there. So Pereira, weird movements. The other thing I have for Pereira, I got to throw the clip up there. You ever watch this guy train on a treadmill? You ever see what he does on Instagram, Matt?
No.
Makes me sick to my stomach. It's disgusting. I hate to see things like that. It's just like guys like Michel Pereira, guys like Rafael Alves. Why are we showboating on the way to the cage? Why are we doing flips in the cage before the fight? There's a chance you could significantly hurt yourself. And for Pereira, he's dancing around.
But we're way more excited for his fight this weekend than we are for unranked welterweights who don't do backflips on their way to the cage. So it does help him a little bit.
It helps him in that respect. It gets the people going. And I can't say the words from that song, but I can like that movie, Blades of Glory. But Matt, when I look at this, I mean, Michel Pereira opened a minus 250 favorite. He's minus 304 right now. Fialho opened a plus 210. He is a plus 239 at this juncture. We look at the Topology votes for this one. 559 total votes, 85% Pereira, 45% have him to win by decision, 47% have him to win by knockout. For the 15% that have Fialho, 65% by knockout. Matt, I have this to say, and I say this halfway jokingly. Michel Pereira, through all the wildness that has been his UFC career, through all the fun that he has, he's taken on one short notice UFC debutant in a fight of the night that was Tristan Connolly, and he lost that fight. And since then, again, you look at the other fights, he loses to Diego Sanchez, but
he beat him though, let's be honest.
Joshua Fabian Diego Sanchez won that fight. And then after that, he tamed the wildness. And in the last 3 fights against Salim Imadaev, who was billed as a great Russian boxer, but he wasn't, he's able to get a win. And Michel Pereira not just outstruck him, outgrappled him. He looked amazing in that fight. And his fight against Chaos Williams, it was back and forth. You can make a strong argument either way.
Back and forth is a fancy way of saying bad.
As to who won that fight. And against Nico Price, he had a great first and second round. And then in the third round, and Daniel Cormier hammers away on this point if you listen to the commentary, but it is true. Why are you still doing all the wild stuff in the third round? Because he tamed it in the first and the second round. Then in the third round, Pereira backed up behind the black line, reverts to his natural state of, I'm going to throw a flying knee at Nico Price, and it misses. I'm going to throw a head kick from distance, and it misses. Still has those big actions and movements at that default setting to where Nico Price had a really good third round against him in that one.
He did, but the big difference I make between Nico Price and Andre Fialho is that Fialho, I don't think, has the staying power of Nico Price, because Nico Price has shown very, very good cardio in the UFC, even after he's been getting beat on for 2 rounds. Like, Not again! Luke Rockhold first, now Nico Price. Even when he is accepting a lot of damage, he is still able to have good cardio in the third round. And Nico Price has a response for the kicking range of Pereira to where I don't think Fialho will. I think Fialho, like you said, does have some kicks, but doesn't have the body or the head kicks that Nico Price has at long range, to where Price, even when he was at the long range of Pereira, yes, he was eating more damage than he was giving, but he was still having some success, and I worry that Fialho won't have as much success at the long range in this fight. But I think this fight's going to end in finish. I really do. I do not see this going to the judges' scorecards.
I go through all of this. I have notes on all of the fights of Andre Fialho, going back to when he was 22, taking on Chidi and Njokuani on a card that was headlined by, Matt, drumroll please, Darian Caldwell and Joe Timanglo.
Wow.
Big time card. But when I look at this, I like Andre Fialho in this fight because he's so much more of a technical fighter, so much more of a technical boxer, and I think with the pace that he pushes, yes. When you push a guy like Michel Pereira back, what does he do? Well, he throws Superman punches off the cage, he throws moonsaults if we're talking about Road FC, and he throws flying knees, and he can definitely knock out Andre Fialho. I don't think he's a better grappler than Fialho. I don't think he has the takedowns like guys can bring into, later in fights. He's not the boxer Chris Curtis is at 170. I think for those reasons, I like Andre Fialho in this fight. And the fact that he's that big of an underdog, it's that much more of a reason to kind of go, really? Okay, I have Fialho. So we're split on the pick here?
Yeah, I think Pereira... I don't see this going to the judges' scorecards. I think if Pereira does get tired, he'll get finished in the third round, but I think Pereira's going to tee off on him at the long range, and we'll see what happens after that.
Both of us split on the pick. I have Portugal's Andre Fialho to get the win. Matt going with Brazil's Michel Pereira, but listen, this is an amazing fight either way. I can't wait for it, and if one of us is wrong, one of us is wrong, and it's going to happen. So I absolutely love the fight. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have, and we have two big-time title fights coming up. Brandon Moreno, Davison Figueiredo, number 3, and the bad blood of teammates spilling over, boiling over. UFC 270, you're not going to want to miss it. Let's keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.